Our gigantic flight of stairs has been serving us well, but before drywall, we need to make much better use of the space underneath. This video goes from start to finish, framing out some creative storage solutions for underneath the stairs. Before we get drywall down here, we need to do a little bit of work on these stairs. I need to build a wall of some sort so we can actually mount a stair railing on the open side. One of the primary reasons we want to do a wall and not just balusters on the open steps is this cardboard template here represents the size of a stand-up freezer that we want to put in here. It's 70 inches tall, and that's about where it's going to sit. That's as far as it can go before it starts hitting the stairs. So we want to build a wall that hides the side of that. So the wall is going to come out to like here, go straight up, and then square off as soon as it hits the stringers. We'll put a little light in there and a switch, and it'll sort of be like a little corner closet, but not quite as closed off. We're not going to have any door or anything. It's just going to be an opening in the wall. For the remaining part of the stairs, we wanted to get a little bit creative with this triangular space that would otherwise go unused. So here's what I'm thinking for that. This is my typical rough engineering sketch of what we got going on. Here's the wall I just explained. Ignore this door header. When Elena came out here to review, we nixed the door, and that's where that just wall opening came from. But on the front side here, we don't want to let this storage go unused. Instead, I'm going to put two tall newel posts that will hold my baluster and my railing in between them. And then I'm only going to wall off the section just to close off the edge of the stairs. So we don't need to worry about returns on the stair treads, and we can keep these two things open. We're thinking a future DIY project is going to be little slide out boot holders or coat racks, or something of that nature to utilize this triangular space. It's kind of difficult, but by leaving the stairs open and just having those two posts to work around, we can do some sort of big drawer system like that. Now, the first prep step I took before we actually get to cutting any wood is marking out our radiant tubing layout. If you remember back to the stair video when I built this set of stairs, our friend Matt came over with his thermal camera. We had a nice cold slab, fired up the radiant system, and we're able to see exactly where the tubing is laid out. So I kept notes of that and made these pencil lines on the floor to represent, along with laying out my wall. So these lines right here are everywhere our radiant tube crosses. And as you can see, it crosses where our wall is anchored. So I need to make sure when I anchor this sill plate that we're not hitting any of these tube layouts. The same goes for my newel post, which I think I'm going to anchor right about here. And as you can see, it's going to sit right on top of one of those loops. I'm going to use some steel angle brackets that I'm going to fabricate to hold these to the floor that are nice and sturdy, but I got to make sure that I do not drill into one of these radiant tubes, because that would be a nightmare. If you're wondering why I'm not putting the newel at the very end of the stairs, it's because I like cutting across this. We're always coming from this side of the garage because the cars and everything else are going to be parked over there. So I'm thinking that I'm actually going to build this first step out to sort of wrap around. That way I have another step, and it's a little bit of a wraparound for this first couple steps here. I don't think that violates code for as far as railing height or anything. It's only a couple steps. The railing starts right afterwards. And I'm going to duplicate what I did on the right side here, which is spacing the stairs out by the width of a 2x4. I'm going to do that same thing over here so that the railing does not impinge on the width of the opening in the stairway. You want to keep that nice 44-inch wide stairs open and not have the railing coming in on it. So the railing will be a little bit spaced out. We'll be able to slide some drywall in there, and then the 1x skirt board, 1x12 skirt board. So that's the rough plan anyway. Let's see how it all comes together. I'm going to actually start cutting some wood now, measuring, mocking stuff up, and doing some carpentry. This is the last bit of rough carpentry I would say we have to do before we get into the finished stuff, all the trim, doors, that kind of thing. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to this project. Let's get it done. First order of business, let's get this spacer up. Clamps for the win, as always. Of course, this is completely crowned, so we got to fasten one end and start working our way over to the other. Straighten it out as we go. Working with imperfect lumber is always the biggest challenge of framing, I think. And this particular piece has been around for quite a while because it was used as a brace for our walls when we were framing, so it's been around for at least 2 years. Thinking back to that, those were the days. Once I get a few screws in here, I'll nail it off. This is a structural piece, I guess, because of the railing. Railing newel post will be attached to it. Before starting this little wall build, I need to finish our Siga in this little area, so that's what I started unrolling out. I'm gonna get just a piece of tape on. I can't totally finish it out because we're gonna be putting a light like right here. So I need to run a wire from an outlet on the other side of this wall up and in this bay. So I'm just gonna keep that little bit of Sega coiled up, tape this guy, and then I can put my top plate on this bottom of this double LVL. You can just barely see the shadow of it. I think it'll be easiest to build this wall in place rather than put it on the ground and try to stand it up. Not only because I'm going between two fixed surfaces, a floor and a ceiling, but the concrete is going to be slightly uneven as well. And there's only a few studs, so it's like I only have to measure 2 or 3 studs, and it'll be a much more precise fit, I think, than trying to build it on the ground. One other thing to mention is this was not in the plans whatsoever. We never thought we were going to put a freezer under these stairs or really have any plan for the space at all. There was just too many other things to think about in the design. But after we framed the stairs up and saw the space that was being used underneath, we thought it would be a good idea to try to utilize that before we put drywall in. That way we're not tearing anything out afterwards. That's when Elena went into a deep dive on Pinterest and found the triangular pull-out stair slider. So then it became part of the plans. And luckily we go slow enough that we hadn't finished everything by the time we figured this out. So we're able to do it now before sheetrock goes in. This tape is so incredibly sticky. If you're curious about the Sega itself, I've got a whole separate video on that. Perfect. I can run my top plate on that and we are still airtight over top the top plate. All right, our sill plates for our little L-shaped alcove wall are in place, and so are our top plates, both for the back wall and for the side wall. It was a little bit tricky setting these guys. For this top plate, I beveled it to the same angle of the stairs, which is 32 degrees, so I had to use a 2x6 in order to get the same width. Turned out nicely though. It's a good plumb line from the back edge of my bottom plate to that, and from the front edge as well, so that'll be nice and clean. To anchor these bottom plates, I just used a couple little 3/16 Tapcons. They don't need much. It's just to keep it from sliding. This is just like a partition wall. Trick on that though, I've broken so many of these Tapcons off. Use a drill to install them with a clutch on it. Keep it at like setting just below the drill setting, and it will not break your head off. So luckily I didn't break any off this time. It's just such a pain to do that. You got to re-drill a hole, and then you got this stub that you got to end up cutting off or working around. Got our pink sill sealer underneath, just like any other exterior wall. This is a pressure treated bottom plate, and then we're just going to frame the studs in place. Obviously I got the layout done, got our drywall nailer here. When I set the position of this bottom plate, I was really careful. I used my 7 to 12 foot Stabilo level over there, really handy for situations like this. I made sure that the edge of this spacer, the left edge of that top plate, and the left edge of this bottom plate were all in one straight plumb line all the way up, and that 7 to 12 foot level really helped with that. That was an expensive tool, but one that was well worth it in this project. I'm looking awful red right now. Pardon my red face. It's because Elena's got her grower light set up here. We are half homesteading, half building right now. So all the grow lights are nice and red. It's giving me some good lighting. A secondary benefit of putting this little alcove here, and this is something I did sort of plan to do from the start, I guess, is this center wall underneath the stairs. This is a pretty long run of stairs. I had needed 2x12 by 20s. It's a 9-foot ceiling and a 14-inch thick floor platform. So to keep that ideal 7-11 rise run ratio on this stair, it's really long, and it's still quite sturdy because that whole right side, I have a structural screw going into every single stud. So the right side is super stiff, but the left side does have a little bit of deflection. Probably can see it on camera, I hope so. There's probably maybe 3/8 to a half inch of deflection when I'm jumping on it, which for a long stair like this isn't much. But this center wall we're putting in is very close to the center span of the stair, which I marked back when I was doing it right there. So we're less than a foot away from that. That's really going to stiffen that up. Not to mention the 2 posts we're going to be adding will also be tied to the stair stringer on the right side here. So this is going to be a rock solid staircase when it's all done. Now I just need to measure and cut each one of these studs to build the walls out. They might be a little bit different, each one of them, just because variations in the concrete or the stairs. So building this in place allows for me to account for those. I think this is a good little montage opportunity. Well, that wasn't so bad. We got our two main walls up that make our little enclosure. Now it is time to do the posts. I've done a little bit of thinking about what we're gonna do here. I was debating on how many steps I wanted to wrap around in kind of a landing and settled on I'm just gonna do this one step here. I'll put the post flush with the nosing on my third tread here, plumb it up, and then I just cut a little piece of this 3-inch steel angle iron that I had laying around. I know that there are purpose-made brackets for this that are nice and concealed underneath the post, but I just don't have time to go get one of those. And I have this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and make my own bracket. And I'm just gonna do it on one side because I have radiant tubing on the other side. I'm also gonna be fastening this into my stair riser, so it should be pretty sturdy when it's all said and done. If it's not, I guess I can try to add another bracket or something and just be really careful. But for the post itself, I'm gonna double up a 2x4 with a 1/2-inch piece of plywood in the middle. That will get me a square 3.5 by 3.5 post. And then I'll slide over a mitered post cap when it comes time for that. I'm just cutting these long right now, at least 40 inches above the stair treads. That way I can cut them to the right angle if I decide I want to angle them, and I have plenty of length there. Well, there's my bracket. I was originally going to use these big 3-inch long anchors and then realized, why am I drilling that deep into the concrete? I do not need that. Just more risk of hitting rebar or my radiant tubing. So I ditched the 2 big holes and drilled 4 small holes to use these much shallower, more reasonable 1.25 tap cons, which will get the job done just fine. This application is going to be shear really, not uplift. So there's no real need for this big heavy duty deep anchor. And then on the wood side, I'm going to use these headlock 3-inch roughly screws, 2 7/8 I guess it is, by Fasten Master. They're the only ones that I had in less than a 3-inch length, which is what I need to go into my 3.5-inch 2x4. And I just drilled 2 holes for this staggered. I didn't think 4 was necessary. We'll see. And this is the point where I remember I should have fastened 1 hole in the steel and then drilled all the rest rather than trying to mark and drill all 4 because they don't line up. I messed around with it and I'm gonna abandon this bracket. I'll use it on the other side maybe. Just gonna get a new one and do a new hole pattern that's the opposite direction. This looks like Swiss cheese. I swear I've drilled way too many holes here. I'm just gonna get my post, set it in place, fasten it, and then I'm gonna come back and add the bracket just to make sure that everything's in the right spot. This is just such a pain. I hate masonry anchors. Side note, I'm gonna be putting this little horseshoe shim underneath this guy just so that it's spaced up off the concrete. It can't wick any moisture up through capillary action. Just a little belt and suspenders approach for making sure this post lasts. I plumbed the post up with my 6-foot level. I did have to drive a couple shims in there between my spacer block and the post itself to get that nice and plumb. And these are the big mamas I'll be using to fasten to the stair stringer. 6-inch SDWS screws. I like to use the screw to drill a hole first because it's a big old screw going in here. Then on the last few threads we can let her eat. Beautiful, sinks nice and flush. Honestly, that's probably so sturdy I don't even need the concrete anchor, but I'm gonna put it in there anyway. Fast forward a bit, got our second post in a very similar manner to the first, and it is pretty darn solid. I made a different looking bracket for this because I wanted to have it a little bit more concealed. We're gonna be doing a built-in with 2 big slide outs on either side of this post eventually, so I didn't really want to have to work around those angle brackets when we make that. And this guy is centered on a radiant tube. That's what that mark is right there. So we had to get outside of that radiant tube. I couldn't just do a simple L bracket back here, but it worked out. There's 2 things left to do for this rough stair framing. First, enclose this portion with a small wall. This is the first piece that I've cut for it actually. I'm gonna come flush with the bottom of my spacer here and then come up just high enough that I'm a couple inches above my skirt board. I think I'll have the guys drywall either side of this, and then I'll cap it with like a nice stained board before we put the balusters in. So I gotta finish that between both sets of posts. And then at the bottom stair, I just need to build a small box to wrap this around. It'll hide this bracket here. Then I'll take another piece of this 1 1/8" rim joist and continue the tread. I'll round it all over nice. I think that'll work really nicely, and it'll allow us to sort of round the corner more easily in the future. I'm cutting these things the same way I'm cutting all the rest of the stair parts that are angled, 32 degrees on the miter saw, and it all seems to line up pretty decently there. So I'll get this top guy on, infill here. We'll be ready for sheetrock on that. This thing is twisted like crazy. Fast forward a bit, we have drywall down here now, and it is time to finish this little stair project by putting our box here. This is just a little 2x6 box I made, and I'm using the bracket that I messed up earlier and made Swiss cheese, but it'll work great for holding this little box to the ground. Just need to shim it up level. It is sitting on top of this bracket and its screws, so it's gonna sit off the floor about 1/4 inch or so, or actually almost a 1/2 inch with the screw heads. So I'll shim the other 3 sides, drill this guy into the floor, use that to attach the front of the step, and then we can put our tread on and hopefully match the height of this tread perfectly. This will be really convenient to be able to have this wraparound step here. I can already tell just using these stairs in their rough state that it is so nice not having this post all the way out to the end of the stairs. I've put about a 1/2 inch of shims under each corner, roughly. This bracket's still loose, and this is pretty much looking good. Most important thing is that it comes up nice and flush with the existing stair tread, and that's what I'm looking for. So it's not perfectly level, but as long as the stair tread can wrap around and be one continuous good looking piece, that's all that really matters. So before I drill that guy in, I'm gonna put a couple screws in this way to anchor it to the side of the stair stringer. That way nothing moves on me when I go to do this bracket, because I made that mistake before. I'll put the wood screws in first and then do the masonry screws last. Yep, looking good there. As always, the trusty right angle adapter comes in handy. Can't leave home without this thing. Beautiful. The only other thing I gotta be mindful of is my radiant tubing location. So I have, according to my lines on the floor, one here, one here. I'm gonna get this guy well out of the way of that. I'm not going very deep in this concrete anyway, so not that it really matters that much. I also made this mistake before too. Make sure you get them all started before you run them in too tight. It's pretty easy to get off kilter if you don't. Still pretty darn good there. Beautiful. Yeah, that's pretty darn solid. Everything is fastened. Just one last little clean. Ready for action. Come on. Boom. Got a step. That's a wrap on stair framing. Next up is all the details of finishing out drywall on the first floor. All right, that was miserable.